Thank you, and welcome to the Patriots 300 Level Podcast for our 79th episode, where we recap the Patriots' loss to the Jacksonville Jaguars and preview the upcoming New York Jets. I'm doing a little solo podcast. Eric wasn't able to make it in for this week, and will join us next week, hopefully. So make sure you follow us on Instagram, Twitter, at Pat's 300 Level Pod for up-to-minute updates and commentary of news of the day. We missed the last week episode. Eric was traveling again for work, and couldn't get the timing right. So missed Drake May's first performance against the Texans, 41-21 loss there, and the Jacksonville Jaguars 32-16. So figured we'll probably just really recap really kind of the overall theme of what really is going on in the last 2 weeks. And it's pretty similar to the last episode where we talked about what the kind of main problem is with this team and what we've seen. So biggest thing, terrible coaching and terrible program in general. It's getting worse than either Eric or I could have thought of. We were just talking about this earlier, and it's we all thought this was going to be bad. We didn't think that this was going to work out. We didn't think it was going to be this bad, where we were seeing complete and total dysfunction throughout this Patriots team. I'll get into that and kind of see what the kind of that breaks down into and why it's kind of happening. So kind of first the thing to kind of break into is Covington, the defensive coordinator. The defense is ranked 30th in DVOA. They can't stop the run. They can't make in-game adjustments. You can't really predict what the team is going to do, and that's a huge issue. And I think that kind of stems with, and we'll get into Mayo in a little bit, but I want to kind of get into the coordinators first. But Covington, he's a first-time defensive coordinator. He's taking a team that had a top 10 ranked defense in DVOA last year. Now everyone's going to say, "Oh, they have injuries this year. They lost Barmore. They lost Peppers. They lost Bentley." The Patriots last year, they lost Judon. They lost um, Gonzalez. They lost Marcus Jones. They pretty much had no corners at one point, other than a lot of rookies out there. But they made it work. They were able to adjust. They were able to make the right kind of changes that were necessary and still be a top performing defense and get through it. And one of the biggest reasons why, and this is one of the things that Eric and I was saying, we'll see how the defense reacts and plays, is because they're losing not just Bill Belichick, but they're losing Steve Belichick as well. Their top two kind of defensive minds on that team. So Bill was the kind of main overarching one, and Steve was the one that ran the defense. He was the one that called the plays. He was the one that made up the scheme really for this defense. And all Mayo did was really just address the room. He wasn't the one game planning. He wasn't the one on calling plays. It was really Steve and Bill's defense there. And right now, when you have someone that Mayo, who's never ran a defense, he was only the linebackers coach and kind of he ran the meetings, but he wasn't the one figuring out what to actually do. You have him being the head coach, and he's the one that's Covington's supposed to go to, where he's supposed to be developing Covington to the defensive coordinator. And how can he develop Covington when he hasn't actually really done it himself? So you have two guys that are actually kind of unqualified for different positions, and we'll get into males in a little bit. But and again, Covington, I would say I wanted him to have the job. He was the most qualified person to have the job. He was getting groomed under Bill, slowly but surely to take on more and more responsibility. But when he doesn't have someone ahead of him to really help him out there, this is where he's kind of getting exposed a little bit from just being a rookie defensive coordinator. Next to AVP, I'll give him credit. He did have a really good script for the Jacksonville game. He had an awful script against Houston. And then, but the thing is, once the script is over, he had no answers. He had no adjustments that he made. He didn't know how to call the game against Jacksonville. And the offense was stagnant from there on out. And it's not really surprising just based off of the offense that he has. He's the 12th offensive coordinator that the Patriots had interviewed, in the 12th person that finally said yes, that he would want to work for them. So it's really no surprise where you're kind of stuck with one of the last guys that the offensive coordinator isn't that great, and he's not really providing the kind of spark that you would need for this. The offense is stuck in the 1980s. It's one of those old West Coast offenses. Everyone was saying, "Oh, we want the West Coast offense. We want this new bright shiny thing." It's not that. The West Coast offense isn't really that new. What Kyle Shanahan and some of the other teams have done is put some twist and ingenuity on the old West Coast offense to bring it into modern times. And that's what everyone really wants. They don't, the old West Coast offense, it, it doesn't have a lot of the different motions and kind of routes and movement that the newer schemes have, and that's what really works well for offenses that do run those schemes. And you see like Kevin O'Connell and again Kyle Shanahan, who are some really great offensive minds, and they know how to put the players in the right positions to succeed. And whereas AVP was saying we're not just going to run motion and run motion, but he doesn't really understand where you're running motion to get people open. That's the biggest thing. You have a lot of guys on this team that struggle to get open, besides really Pop Douglas. And that's a fantastic way to kind of get them in motion to get them a little bit of separation where right now they're having trouble doing that. Um, and again, this is another first time offensive coordinator. And the big thing kind of getting into, we'll get into it a little bit, is just what their plan was going into this year and why it's failing. And then special teams, multiple times, Bryce Barringer. Both me and Eric love Barringer. He has a terrific leg, but there's multiple times he's outkicked his coverage and then was straight down the middle. The one thing that you're not supposed to do as a punter is kick it straight down the middle. And what has he done? He kicked it straight down the middle, and then they ended up running a punt return for a touchdown against Jacksonville. So, kind of getting into what their plan was, and I'll get into Mayo a little bit after that. But their plan really was really piss poor. So, number one, you have all this cap space. You know that the offensive line is your biggest issue going into the season besides quarterback. So, you know, like we said, there's only three big issues this team really needed to address. If they actually could have addressed them all, and not really even all like really, really well, but if you had something in there to kind of put a stopgap, they could have actually been more successful than they are right now. And you even look at this team right now, if they had better coaching, what would their record be? They wouldn't be 1-6 right now. They would probably be 1-3, maybe. Um, so you look at, they know they needed quarterback, they needed a left tackle, and then they needed a number one wide receiver. And that's really all he really needed. What they did was they drafted May, which I'm not really giving them any credit for because he was the third guy there. Everyone said they would take him. That was the easy pick. There was nothing really that they could have else done. Nothing they really wanted to do. And then they addressed left tackle by drafting a right tackle, and assuming he could play left tackle, and then signing a right tackle and saying we hope we can play left tackle, and just hoping one of those two guys would play left tackle for them. And they were caught with their pants down when there was the run on left tackles in the draft, and they were caught in their pants down for wide receiver in the second round, where they ended up overdrafting Polk because the two guys that they wanted weren't available anymore, and they said, "Well, we need a wide receiver. We're going to pick him right now." And if that's the case, you trade down a little bit and you draft the tackle. You don't go overreaching just because that's what you need. And the whole big thing with Wolf and the Packer way is really the background of it is really what Belichick's way was, is that we draft the best player available. You don't go drafting for need. And drafting for need is never a good option in the draft because then you overdraft people. And what he did was the complete opposite. He drafted we need people on offense. And again, you're going to try and draft the best offensive players that are available because then you have a little bit more needs. But they just overdrafted people. They made really bad decisions where, and again, Caden Wallace, he may end up working out eventually. He's probably not going to work out at left tackle. He's maybe a right tackle. But then you signed Michael Owenu to play right tackle. You paid him tackle money. And again, he's a really good guard, but you're also paying him tackle money. Why don't you have him play? You should have had him start at tackle from the beginning. Um, so yeah, what they did just for the offensive line alone, I think is a fireable offense. They knew going into the season how important that the offensive line is and how important it is for a quarterback's development, and they did nothing to really absolve that. And really, all of their signings, pretty much all of their signings, have failed. And you look at even Jacoby Brissett. If their whole plan was that Jacoby Brissett, and it seemed like they rushed putting May out there, and May's looked, I think, really good. But if their whole plan was they wanted May to sit longer and they needed to play him because Brissett was really bad, everyone could have told you Brissett isn't good. Brissett is a backup quarterback that can't play a whole season. If you're depending on him to play well, it's not going to work. And they just didn't put enough around this team. They have the money, and there were other options out there in the draft. I don't have to go through them all, but there are plenty of other tackles and guards that were picked and centers that were out there and ready to be picked, and they didn't do that. They didn't go signing some of the guys that were available. Um, so yeah, I think some of the decisions that they made, just on the team alone, were really poor. And what's the other thing that was kind of the other decision that they made that wasn't great was again Jerod Mayo and the staff in general. So again, um, with Mayo, again, Eric and I weren't in favor of Mayo. We wanted Bill to be back. But if Bill wasn't to be back, there's Vrabel. There were other coaches out there that had more success and more kind of coaching experience. Whereas Mayo, you're hoping that he's going to be Mike Vrabel in the end. You have no idea if he's going to be when you had Vrabel right there for the taking. And then the other thing is where Mayo hasn't done it. He's never been a head coach. You're putting him in a situation where it's this rebuild situation, and that's a really hard thing to do for a first-time head coach, let alone where you have all three coordinators are first-time coordinators, where Covington's never run a defense. AVP's never, even though technically he was an offense coordinator, he was never a play caller in Cleveland, and he's never really ran an offense there. And then the special teams coordinator is a first time special teams coordinator. So you have all of these guys that it's their first time doing it on top of a first time head coach. It's not a way to make him successful. The way to make him successful, if possible, is to put people around him that know what they're doing and that have experience and that can help him out. And at least he can lean on them that way. And that way there's less that he has to do at first. And right now, there no one knows what they're doing. It's a complete and utter debacle where there's no in-game adjustments being made. He's on the sideline looking like he has no idea what's going on and just staring like a deer in the headlights. He kind of looks like he's one of those. If you just look at the sideline, he looks like he's one of those fans that win a contest, he gets to sit on the sideline, be head coach for the day, and he looks like that. He's got no idea what's going on. He's never coaching the actual players. There's countless amount of times where you would see Bill on the sideline with the whiteboard or one of the kind of printouts showing what the defense or offense needs to do to be successful. And Mayo's not doing that. And I don't know if he knows how to do it. He was only a linebacker for the Patriots. He was only a linebacker's coach. He's never had the experience that others have in learning more about the overall team and how kind of other units function. Um, you even look at Vrabel, you'd say, oh, he was a defensive player, but he coached in multiple different areas and he coached for different teams and different schemes and learned different things. Whereas Mayo only knows one thing. So how can he possibly tell an offensive line and what he should be doing? Or how should he be telling a wide receiver what he should be doing? Or a cornerback what he should be doing? Or a defensive tackle? It's just really, and again, defensive tackle, he probably knows a little bit more of than like an offensive lineman, but still, it's just the amount that he has to try and do. I just don't think he can. And let alone that. So again, no in-game adjustments. He seems completely in over his head. Doesn't know how to coach positions. And then again, all of the comments that he's been making throughout this the offseason to the preseason to the season, he just says one thing, says another, and that's not just happening out here in the public. There's in the real world, people all know someone like this where they're just talking out of their ass all the time. He's not just doing it in front of press conferences. He's not that savvy. He's got to be doing it within the team. He can't have a command right now based off of kind of how his whole presence is. He has no idea what he's saying. And then he goes calling the team soft, which is the craziest thing to do and the most risky thing you could do. You could possibly lose your whole team. And again, what he's talking about, yeah, they're playing really soft. They're allowing a shit ton of rushing yards, 171 yards, 192 yards, 193, 148. They can't stop the run, but part of that too is the scheme. They're not. You don't need um these top tier players to stop the run. It's pretty easy. You don't have to have the greatest amount of players to stop the run if you are trying to stop it. You could put players in and scheme it up so that way you're stopping it and put more out there. Go to a bear front, go zero, do like a zero blitz. There's things that you can do to stop the run if you don't have great players, and it's one of the easier things in general that to try and stop. Right, it's a lot easier that way than trying to stop a great passing attack. And then you have just the dissension that's coming out, especially the wide receiver room is a complete joke about what they think is acceptable to be saying out loud. Where Polk is saying he's got the best hands in the league, and then he goes dropping passes, and then he was like, "Oh, it's not mental, and it's not my hands." He's just kind of fighting with what it is. And then you have KJ Osborne, who the other day he had posted a text from his agent and then saying we're going to figure this out, like, and then today they asked if he wants to be traded. He said that's like an alley oop. This is where I am. This is the place I signed to be. A lot of things are out of my control, but I like where my feet are today. I'm here. We'll just kind of rock and see where as it goes. And that doesn't sound like someone that wants to be here. And he's basically kind of saying I want to be traded. If Wolf or Mayo had any kind of gumption or any kind of coaching like pedigree, he'd be cut today. He would not be on this team tomorrow when this podcast airs, and I bet he's going to be, and he should be gone. Like he's not the type of player. He's not a great player. He's a what, fourth wide receiver. You don't need him. So if he's saying stuff like that, you have to set an example and cut him. It's ridiculous that it's being allowed. And then you have Bourne saying the energy could have been better, a lot better. We got to find ways to fight from within the fight adversity. We know we're going to play at 9:30 through the week. We have to understand that. That's making personal decisions rather than staying up all night or eating whatever it is that make us better. We have to do those decisions. So again, I really focus on rather than staying up all night or eating whatever, and usually probably implying drinking too, because you had all these people that had food poisoning where were they going out? Did they go out to like a bar the night before? Did they break curfew? Was that the whole reason why KJ Osborne was playing rather than Thornton or Baker because what he was supposed to be inactive, and then what was Demario Douglas's kind of food poisoning? Was it actual food poisoning? Was he out? Was he not making the right decisions there? Whatever Bourne's saying, it sounds like there was something going on within this team, and that needs to be taken control of. And it just seems like every week after week after week, this keeps going on. And then you have Booty, who I like, who's basically saying that the reason why he's getting more touches is he's complaining, saying he's not dealing with that bullshit again from last year. Like, you can't give it. These guys have done nothing, and they're acting like they're like you got like the greatest players in the world over there. And again, some of them I think are going to be good players. Demario Douglas, I like. He's a good player. Booty, I think, could be successful in this league, but he's not like AJ Brown, and Douglas isn't like Tyreek Hill yet. You can't be acting like this where they're throwing tantrums on the field before where they're not getting the ball. But I just think it starts with the leadership of Mayo. And right now, the way it is and how much of a sinking ship this is, it's not getting better. It's getting worse. Week after week, they're playing worse. They're not well coached. It's hasn't been successful even from a personnel standpoint where people are just kind of going off the reservation every week. There's someone else saying that we need to play like the right scheme. We're not doing that, and they're kind of calling other guys out. If I were the Patriots, I would blow this up at the end of this year. If I were the Patriots, I would fire every single one of these coaches and player personnel and start from scratch because that's what needs to be done. You know, you don't have the head coach right here. You know, he's not going to be successful. He is completely in over his head and isn't going to be able to lead this team to a championship right in the next 3 to 5 years. And then you have Elliott Wolf, where the offensive line alone is a fireable offense. All of his signings were terrible. We don't, again, it's too early to judge draft picks, but really, other than Drake May, what draft pick can you say was successful right now? Again, it's too early to really say right now, but it's not looking good. I would fire every one of them. I would start new. This is the other thing too that's different about this year is the type of talent that's going to be available for head coaches again is going to be up there. You're going to have Brian Flores. You're going to have Mike Vrabel. You're going to have Ben Johnson from the Lions. You're going to have at least those three that you know of that are very good head coaches that were better than what we have right now. And again, this is where you could reset your whole program from the player personnel route. These guys were here the last 5 to 10 years. It's still looking like they're doing the same mistakes. Where the whole reason why they ended up going down and down and down was when more and more power was taken away from Bill. He had to be more collaborative. And you go seeing those picks like a Taekwon Thornton, which is not a Bill Belichick pick. Everyone knows that's Matt Groh. Everyone knows that's a Matt Groh pick. And you have all these other picks that just don't seem like a prototypical Bill pick. And then you have like Jacoby Myers, where Bill wanted him, and then the front office tried to convince him to get Juju Smith-Schuster. So, how complicit are these guys in that? And then you have like you look at Polk again. He could be a decent receiver. He's supposed to be one of those possession guys. Is he a second round pick, a top second round pick wide receiver? I don't think so. Again, maybe he will be, but nothing that he's really shown shows that he'd be that type of guy you would pick there. He seems like he'd be like a fourth round pick kind of wide receiver. Um, and it just doesn't seem like I would just start fresh. I would start completely fresh, bring in a coach that you know is going to get the job done, have a great offensive coordinator, have a great defensive coordinator, and have a someone that the head coach can work with in player personnel and have a kind of a 50-50 split where like, we know we want this and be kind of hand in hand there. I don't think it's going to happen. The thing with Kraft is that he has put so much into Mayo being his guy and it made it so personal where he had him picked out for 6 years and he picks his coaches like he picks his wives, which doesn't make any sense. And then the whole reason why he picked him is because of the trip to Israel. Where if that's the reason why you wanted him to be head coach, that is the craziest reason in the world. And is also why he's not going to be successful. He's not prepared for this role. He doesn't know enough about the rest of the team in general and how to kind of take command and run this team. He doesn't know enough to make the adjustments and give a vision for what they need to be doing. And I've been talking about Mayo for a lot now, right now. And anyone that's been listening the last few episodes know that we're not really impressed with what we're seeing. And I think it's going kind of how we thought it would, but worse. I never expected it to look this bad and this kind of out of hand and out of touch. But again, we'll see how it goes. I don't think he's going to be fired. I do think that if the season continues the way it is, there's going to be a lot of other changes. I think AVP will be gone. Covington will be gone. There's going to be a lot of scapegoats there. I don't know if Wolf will make it either. Um, he might still make it one more year and they'll blame the coaching in general, saying they didn't have people to go there. And then the other thing too, before I get it going with Mayo, is that he never some of the reasons why they were kind of stuck with the guys that they got is that he never had an interview for this job. So he was basically just given it. He had no contacts. He had no plan. He had no one that he wanted to actually hire. Usually when these coaches go into these meetings with the interviews, they say, this is going to be my staff. This is going to be my offense coordinator. This is going to be my defensive coordinator, my other one, my special teams coordinator, and then so on and so forth. The guys I want in player personnel. They have this whole plan mocked up of what their vision is going to be for the team. Mayo had none of that. They ended up getting basically the kind of second coming of all these scrap heaps from Green Bay and Cleveland. Where are you trying to emulate the Cleveland Browns, where they haven't done anything successful ever? Um, and the guys that Green Bay are kind of washing away, I think, are the guys that you really want. It's just he had no one that he could lean into, and then so they had to use Wolf as the guy that he could try and interview guys. And it's just they didn't get the top tier people that they need. They don't have the bright minds that they needed, and it's just one thing after another. But I don't think Kraft again. I think the year that Mayo would be fired would probably be year 3 or year 4. He's going to hang on a little bit too long to try and show that he wasn't wrong. But if it keeps going the way it's going, maybe it'd be after next year. But I would fire them all right now. Again, maybe not right now, but at the end of the season. All right. That's a lot about the coaching staff and how kind of incompetent they are. Drake May he's really the one shining thing on this team. He's looked more and more impressive as the 2 weeks have gone on. Again, there's stuff that he still needs to tighten up. His accuracy can be inaccurate at times, but that's something we all know about him. I think the first game with him against the Texans was a kind of prototypical Drake May game that if anyone watched him at UNC would say this looked pretty much exactly how he looked at UNC. He would make some really good throws and really good athletic things. He would have some throws you'd be like, what the hell was that? There was some throws that were just completely throws either in the ground or way over a guy. It's just completely inaccurate. Um, and then he'll just look good on other ones. It's just he looked pretty much the same there. He tightened it up a lot, I think, against Jacksonville. I also don't think it wasn't as hard of a game for him. The Jacksonville's passing defense is one of the worst in the leagues. So he had a little bit more easiness there where the Texans have a really good defense. So it'll be interesting seeing the next couple weeks to see how he progresses and if he looks more like Jacksonville or more like the Texans there. But had some good things there. Arm is just the one thing where it's so refreshing to watch someone be able to throw with ease and the strength with that. Um, I still remember being in Gillette for that last Jets game last year and just watching Zappy try and throw it 20 yards into the wind with the snow and just had not been able to really do it. So it's just refreshing watching someone with that good of an arm strength. Three up, three down. Do real quick. I've got Hunter Henry, Drake May, and Jennings. It was actually one shining guy on the defense. Henry looks like he'll be a really good piece with May. I think the two guys with May that will work well are Demario Douglas and Hunter Henry. They just know how to get open. A really good player there. Drake May again looked really well. He was really cooking on offense. The problem too with AVP in this game is that after the first two series, he kept being too run heavy. And I get you want to try and establish the run, but you know that Jacksonville has the worst passing defense in the league, and May was doing well against it. So why are you trying to run so much and you're getting nothing? You're putting him in a bad position on third and long because of that. Eventually, he needed to know he had to give it up and then just let him throw. And again, there's ways to do it without having him step back and take hits where you have screens and bubble passes and hitches and end rounds, that sort of thing, where it's not all just drop back and pass. There's things to take the ease off him, but still allow him to throw and get some spacing there. And Jennings has been a really good player. He really caught on second half of last year and has kind of really continued it. Is their best edge setter on defense. So three down. Coaching staff was again awful. Another mistake that Mayo did was going for two on when they scored the touchdown to try and make it a 7 point game, where losing that completely killed any momentum they had from that defensive stop, where they get actually saved by Doug Peterson making a mistake and not kicking the field goal, go up 3 scores, and then they ended up getting stopped on fourth down. So then he handed it right back into him by going for two and missing it there, where now it was a 2 score game again. Whereas if you just kick the extra point, then it'd be a 1 score game. It puts more pressure on Jacksonville and just would allow that to happen. Jelani Devine, again, not all of it's his fault. He's playing on a position right now. They don't have him in the right spot. He's not great where they put him, but he was pretty bad. And then Polk, you can't go saying you have the best hands in the league, drop multiple passes, fall down on routes. He's just a mess. He should be benched. And again, he's probably gonna miss this week on concussion, but he should be benched for the next 1 to 3 games. New York Jets upcoming. Don't really need to go over too much with that because we just went over them a couple weeks ago. They now have Devontae Adams though, and Hassan Reddick should be playing for the first time. And yeah, so we'll see how that kind of goes. Devontae Adams had the most targets, only had 3 catches last game. So last score was 24-3. So predictions for this: Jets are favored by 7 points. Over under is 41. I've got the Jets winning 38-17. I think it's just going to be that 24-3. It could have easily been 42-3, just the way that the game was going. They kind of let up after the first half. So they could have made a worse game, the Jets, if they wanted to. So I'm thinking 38-17. They'll score more here just because May makes the offense a little bit better. I just don't have faith, though, in AVP to continue to have a good enough game plan throughout the whole game, or make the necessary adjustments. And then the defense, I think, will continue to get shredded, and be 38-17. All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining, and look forward to talking to you guys next time. And Eric should be back hopefully for next episode as well. We can break down the Jets game and then the upcoming game afterwards. So thank you, everyone, and talk to you guys next time.